Our story begins in Jerusalem, where Daniel, a young man devoted to God, lived with his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They were more than just friends, they were brothers in faith, sharing dreams and aspirations, bound by their devotion to God and their love for their homeland. One day, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon conquered Jerusalem and took Daniel and his friends captive. The city that once echoed with their laughter now lay in ruins, and their future seemed uncertain as they were led away in chains. They journeyed across the desert to Babylon, a city of towering walls and dazzling buildings. The journey was long and arduous, filled with the scorching heat of the day and the chilling cold of the night. Yet, amidst the hardship, they found solace in each other's company and in their unwavering faith. The king chose Daniel and his friends for special training, hoping they'd serve in his royal court. This training was rigorous, designed to transform them into loyal servants of the Babylonian Empire. They were taught the language and literature of the Babylonians, and their every move was scrutinized. He gave them new Babylonian names: Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These names were meant to strip them of their identity, to make them forget their heritage and their God. Despite their new names and surroundings, Daniel and his friends held tightly to their faith and identity. They prayed together, supported each other, and reminded themselves daily of who they were and where they came from. They remembered their God, even in this strange land. Their faith was a beacon of hope, guiding them through the darkness of their captivity. The king's training was an honor, but it was also a test of loyalty and faith. They were constantly tested, not just in their knowledge and skills, but in their commitment to their God and their people. Daniel didn't know what the future held, but he trusted God had a plan. He believed that every challenge they faced was part of a greater purpose, a divine plan that they could not yet see. Even as captives, they believed God was with them. Their faith was their strength, their shield against the trials and tribulations of their new life in Babylon. Their faith would guide them through every challenge in Babylon. It was their compass, their guiding star, leading them through the labyrinth of their new existence. This was just the beginning of Daniel's incredible journey, a journey that would test his faith, his courage, and his resolve in ways he could never have imagined. He was far from home, but his faith was unshakable. He knew that no matter where he was, God was with him, guiding him, protecting him. Daniel's trust in God would become his greatest strength. It was this trust that would see him through the darkest of times and the most daunting of challenges. In Babylon, Daniel would discover that faith can change everything. It can turn the impossible into the possible, the hopeless into the hopeful. Sometimes all it takes is a faithful heart to change the world, and Daniel's heart was filled with faith, ready to face whatever lay ahead. In the grand halls of Babylon, the king commanded Daniel and his friends to eat the finest foods and drink the richest wines from his royal table. The spread was lavish, filled with delicacies meant to show the king's generosity and power. But beneath the surface, this food had been offered to Babylonian gods, making it forbidden for Daniel and his friends. To eat it would mean turning away from the faith and traditions they held dear since childhood. Daniel, determined to remain faithful, approached the chief official with humility and respect. He asked for permission to eat only vegetables and drink water, hoping to honor God even in a foreign land. The official hesitated, fearing the king's anger if Daniel and his friends appeared weak or unhealthy. But Daniel suggested a simple test. Let them eat their chosen diet for 10 days, and then compare their health to the others. After 10 days, the results were clear. Daniel and his friends looked stronger and healthier than those who ate the royal food. Their faithfulness was rewarded, and God's blessing was evident for all to see. From that moment on, they were allowed to follow their faith and eat as their beliefs required, even in the heart of a foreign empire. Daniel and his friends showed that honoring God, even in small daily choices, can lead to unexpected blessings and strength. Their quiet courage and unwavering commitment set them apart in the king's court, earning respect from those around them. Even when faced with pressure to conform, Daniel and his friends chose faith over comfort, showing that true strength comes from within. Their faithfulness didn't go unnoticed. The entire court saw their discipline and devotion, and many were inspired by their example. Daniel's resolve gave his friends the courage to stand strong together, united in their beliefs despite the challenges they faced. God honored their obedience, granting them wisdom, knowledge, and favor beyond their years. They became known for their insight and understanding. The king himself was amazed by their excellence, recognizing their unique gifts and setting them apart for special honor. For Daniel and his friends, this was only the beginning of their journey of faith, a journey that would shape not only their own lives, but the destiny of a nation. After their rigorous training in the royal courts of Babylon, Daniel and his friends were finally summoned to stand before the mighty king Nebuchadnezzar. The king, known for his power and unpredictable temper, was eager to see if these young men from Judah truly possessed the wisdom and knowledge that had been promised. As they answered his questions with insight and clarity, Nebuchadnezzar was deeply impressed. He found them 10 times wiser than all the magicians and enchanters in his entire kingdom, and he placed them in positions of great responsibility. But one night, everything changed. The king was plagued by a mysterious and troubling dream. When he awoke, the details slipped from his mind, leaving him restless and anxious. He sensed the dream was important, perhaps even a message from the gods, but its meaning was lost to him. Desperate for answers, Nebuchadnezzar summoned all his wise men and demanded the impossible. They must tell him not only the meaning of the dream, but the dream itself. If they failed, they would all be put to death. The wise men were terrified. Never before had such a demand been made. They pleaded with the king, explaining that no human could do what he asked. Only the gods could reveal such secrets, and they did not dwell among men. Furious at their inability, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the execution of all the wise men in Babylon, including Daniel and his friends, even though they had not been present at the king's initial summons. When Daniel heard of the king's harsh decree, he did not panic. Instead, he approached Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, with calm and respect, asking for time so he could seek the answer to the king's mystery. Daniel knew that no human wisdom could solve this riddle. He gathered his friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and together they prayed earnestly, seeking mercy from the God of heaven. With unwavering faith, Daniel promised that he would reveal both the dream and its meaning to the king, trusting that God would provide the answer. The fate of Daniel, his friends, and all the wise men of Babylon now hung in the balance. The palace was tense with fear and uncertainty, as everyone waited to see what would happen next. That night, Daniel turned to God in prayer, pouring out his heart and seeking divine wisdom. He trusted that the God who knows all mysteries could reveal what no one else could. Daniel's faith gave him courage to face the king's deadly challenge. Even in the shadow of death, he stood firm, believing that God was with him. He believed with all his heart that God could do the impossible, and that faith gave him hope in the darkest hour. Daniel's response, full of faith and humility, set the stage for a miracle that would astonish the entire kingdom and reveal the power of the true God. The king's impossible challenge became an opportunity for God's greatness to be revealed before all of Babylon, changing the course of history. Through Daniel's trust and courage, everything was about to change. Not just for him and his friends, but for an entire empire. Daniel gathered his friends and urged them to pray for God's mercy. That night, God revealed the king's dream to Daniel in a vision. Daniel praised God, knowing the answer came from him. He rushed to Arioch, the captain, and stopped the executions. Daniel was brought before the king and humbly gave credit to God. He described the dream, a giant statue made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay, destroyed by a stone that became a mountain. The king was stunned. It was exactly his dream. Daniel explained that God alone reveals mysteries. The king's life and the lives of the wise men were spared. Daniel's faith saved many that day. His courage and trust in God were rewarded. Daniel's reputation grew throughout Babylon. Impressed by Daniel, the king promoted him and his friends, but Nebuchadnezzar's pride led him to build a massive golden statue. He commanded everyone to bow down and worship it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego refused, standing tall while others bowed. They would not betray their God, even under threat of death. Their defiance was noticed by all. The king's warning was clear: worship the statue or face the fiery furnace. The stage was set for a test of faith. Jealous advisors reported the three friends' defiance to the king. Furious, Nebuchadnezzar gave them one last chance to bow. They refused, declaring their faith in God, whether he saved them or not. The king ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into the flames. The fire was so hot it killed the soldiers who threw them in, but inside the furnace, the king saw 4 men walking unharmed, the fourth like a son of the gods. Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. He called them out, and they emerged without a single burn. Their faith had delivered them. The king praised their God. Their courage inspired the entire kingdom. Faith had triumphed over fear. Years later, King Darius ruled Babylon and recognized Daniel's wisdom. Darius planned to make Daniel second in command, stirring jealousy among other officials. Unable to find fault in Daniel, they plotted against his faith. They convinced the king to sign a law. For 30 days, no one could pray to any god or man except Darius. Anyone who disobeyed would be thrown into the lion's den. The law could not be changed. Daniel's enemies set their trap, knowing he would remain faithful to God. Daniel's devotion became the target of their scheme. The king, unaware of their motives, signed the decree. Daniel's faith was about to face its greatest test. The stage was set for another act of courage. Daniel's integrity would soon shine brighter than ever. Daniel learned of the law but continued to pray openly to God. His enemies caught him and reported to the king. Darius, distressed, tried to save Daniel but was bound by his own law. Daniel was thrown into the lion's den. The king wished him deliverance and spent a sleepless night in worry. At dawn, Darius rushed to the den and called out to Daniel. Daniel replied, "God sent his angel to shut the lions' mouths." Daniel was unharmed, his faith rewarded. The king was overjoyed and ordered Daniel lifted out. Not a scratch was found on him. Daniel's trust in God had saved him. The king honored Daniel's God before all the people. Daniel's faith became known throughout the kingdom. His courage inspired generations to come. Daniel's story is more than adventure. It's a lesson in unwavering faith. From refusing royal food to facing lions, Daniel's trust in God never wavered. His friend's courage in the furnace showed faith isn't about being rescued, but about trusting God's plan. Daniel's integrity earned him respect, even from powerful kings. He stayed true to his beliefs with humility and excellence. God blessed Daniel and gave him favor. Daniel's journey reminds us that God is always with us, even in our greatest challenges. Faith and courage can change the world. Daniel's story inspires us to trust God, no matter what. And that, my friends, is a story worth remembering.